Dealerships are sitting on stacks of Hondas they can't give away, even with markdowns. What went wrong? From design flops to outdated performance, these bikes have become dead weight on showroom floors. Whether you ride cruisers or commuters, this list exposes the 7 Honda models losing value fast in 2025 and why smart buyers are walking away. Number 7. Honda CB 1000R Black Edition. This bike was once hailed as the ultimate blend of sport bike performance and stripped-down naked aggression. With its angular styling, exposed frame elements, and darkened finishes, it struck a pose that turned heads in every dealership. Riders who wanted the performance of a full-liter machine without the fairings of a supersport saw it as a sophisticated weapon for the street. But here in the year 2025, that excitement has vanished. Underneath the sleek styling sits a 998 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled inline-4 engine that delivers 143 horsepower and 77 pound-feet of torque. That power figure is impressive on paper and places it firmly in the leader-class performance category. But despite those stats, the bike never quite delivered the edge riders were hoping for. Throttle response was muted, especially at low revs, and the power delivery felt softer than its competitors in real-world conditions. For many, it was a bike that looked aggressive but rode like a gentleman's commuter, not a street fighter. The CB 1000R uses a 6-speed transmission paired with a slipper clutch and ride-by-wire throttle. It also features selectable riding modes including standard, sport, rain, and user. But those electronics, while functional, never felt as sharp or customizable as what is found on Yamaha's MT series or Kawasaki's Z lineup. As performance expectations rose across the industry, Honda's electronics package quickly began to feel dated and uninspired. Now let's break down the specs that matter. The CB 1000R weighs in at 471 pounds wet, keeping it relatively nimble for a leader-class machine. Front suspension comes in the form of a 43-inch Showa separate-function big piston fork, while the rear is controlled by a single Showa shock with adjustable preload and rebound damping. Braking is handled by dual radial-mounted 4-piston calipers gripping 310-inch floating discs up front, and a single 2-piston caliper on the rear with a 256-inch disc. Anti-lock braking system comes standard, but the feedback from the lever is often described as vague, especially during spirited riding. The wheelbase measures 57 inches and seat height is a manageable 32.7 inches, which helps accommodate a variety of rider sizes. The fuel tank holds 4.3 gallons, giving it an acceptable range for city rides, but somewhat limiting on longer weekend trips. The instrument panel is a full-color thin-film transistor display, offering basic data like speed, revs, gear position, and ride mode, but it lacks deeper integration or smartphone connectivity features that are quickly becoming standard across its rivals. When it launched, the price of the CB 1000R Black Edition was $12,999. That was a premium ask in a market filled with more aggressively tuned and better equipped competition. And now in 2025, used listings have fallen below $8,000. With low-mileage examples still sitting untouched in private listings and dealership showrooms, many owners are discovering that the Black Edition's exclusivity did not translate into retained value. There is simply not enough demand for a bike that has not been meaningfully updated in years. The CB 1000R faded fast, but the next bike on the list had everything it needed to succeed and still failed to find a home on American roads. We sifted through owner forums, auction data, and resale reports so you don't have to. That kind of work deserves more than a thumbs up. It deserves a subscribe. Number 6. Honda NT 1100. When Honda introduced the NT 1100, the goal was clear: create a road-focused touring motorcycle that could deliver all-day comfort, advanced tech, and balanced performance in a more accessible package than the Africa Twin. On paper, the concept looked promising. The NT was designed to be smoother, lower, and more street-oriented, with refined ergonomics and a sophisticated electronics package. But here in the year 2025, the NT 1100 has quietly become one of the most overlooked touring bikes on the market. Units are sitting unsold in dealerships across the country, and resale values are plunging fast. At the heart of the NT is a 1084 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, lifted directly from the Africa Twin. This liquid-cooled power plant generates 101 horsepower and 77 pound-feet of torque delivered through either a 6-speed manual transmission or Honda's dual-clutch automatic gearbox. While the engine offers smooth torque delivery and commendable fuel efficiency, many riders have criticized it for lacking the character and punch that touring riders expect at this price point. The NT is quiet, controlled, and smooth, but also uninspiring. Let's take a closer look at the specs that matter. The NT 1100 weighs in at 525 pounds with the standard 6-speed gearbox and 538 pounds with the dual-clutch version. Its chassis is built around a semi-double cradle steel frame, and the suspension consists of a 43mm Showa separate function fork up front and a ProLink single shock in the rear with remote preload adjustability. Suspension travel is geared toward road comfort rather than off-road adventure, and it soaks up highway imperfections well, but struggles on uneven rural roads. Braking is handled by dual front 310mm discs with 4-piston radial mount calipers and a single rear disc. The anti-lock braking system comes standard and performs well under panic braking and slit conditions. The 17-inch cast aluminum wheels are wrapped in sport touring rubber, prioritizing pavement grip and stability over versatility. Riders will find a comfortable upright riding position, wind protection from a 5-level adjustable windshield, and a seat height of 32.3 inches, accessible for most riders without sacrificing legroom. The NT also comes with built-in panniers for storage, heated grips, cruise control, and a full-color 6.5-inch touchscreen that includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. However, that same dashboard has been a point of criticism. Some riders report a laggy interface, difficult Bluetooth pairing, and a lack of customization for screen layouts. What was supposed to be a highlight of the NT has become another reason buyers have walked away. The NT 1100 entered the market with a starting price of $13,999, which seemed justifiable for a tech-packed touring bike, but in the real world it landed in an awkward space. It was too expensive for new riders, not exciting enough for experienced sport tourers, and lacked the raw edge or adventurous charm of the Africa Twin. And if you thought the NT missed its mark, wait until you see the next bike on the list, an adventure machine that turned heads for the wrong reasons. Don't leave your next ride up to chance. The gear we trust is listed in the description. Tested, tough, and worth every mile. Number 5. Honda CB 500X. It was once considered a gateway into Honda's adventure lineup, an approachable, reliable mid-weight machine that looked the part without overwhelming new riders. But by the year 2025, the facelifted version has become one of the coldest bikes on dealership floors across America. Despite the updated styling in 2023, the core of the bike remained unchanged, and that lack of evolution has finally caught up to it. At the center of the bike is a 471 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, producing 47 horsepower and 32 pound-feet of torque. These numbers, while acceptable for a lightweight dual-purpose machine several years ago, now fall short in a market filled with high-performance options in the same class. The motor is fuel-injected, liquid-cooled, and reliable, but it is stretched to its limit in this platform. Mechanically, the CB500X rides on a basic suspension setup that feels outclassed by today's standards. The front end features a non-adjustable Showa separate function fork, while the rear uses a single shock with 9-position preload adjustment. Both are soft and undersprung, which may benefit beginners, but leaves experienced riders underwhelmed, especially on uneven pavement or gravel trails. Braking is handled by a single front disc with a twin-piston caliper and a rear disc with a single-piston caliper, all linked to a standard anti-lock braking system. The setup is adequate but lacks bite and feedback when pushed hard. Its curb weight of 434 pounds puts it near the heavier end of its class, and when fully loaded with luggage, it begins to feel top-heavy and sluggish at low speeds. One of the CB500X's most frustrating traits is its design and decision. It looks like an adventure bike, but rides more like a commuter. It has upright ergonomics and a tall windscreen, but limited ground clearance and no real off-road protection. Its seat height comes in at 31.9 inches, making it approachable for most riders, but its narrow saddle and harsh suspension wear on the rider after long stints. Fuel capacity sits at 4.6 gallons, offering decent range thanks to strong fuel economy, often over 60 miles per gallon, but even excellent mileage can't save a bike that no longer excites. The real nail in the coffin for the CB500X in 2025 is its failure to evolve. While Yamaha updated its Tenere 700 and KTM continued refining the 390 Adventure, Honda stuck with the same formula. New adventure riders want more than styling cues. They want performance, technology, and versatility. The CB500X facelift model offers none of those upgrades. As a result, dealerships across the country are sitting on unsold inventory, and online listings are saturated with low-mileage units priced well below their original value. When it launched, the CB500X carried a starting price of $7,399. Today, even two-year-old models with factory accessories struggle to move for $5,000. The depreciation is steep and the interest is low. Riders simply have better options, both inside and outside Honda's own lineup. And if you think this platform aged badly, wait until you see the next bike on this list. It was supposed to bring small bike fun to urban riders, but ended up riding straight into oblivion. Number 4. Honda CB300R. Introduced as part of Honda's Neo Sports Cafe lineup, it aimed to give new riders a taste of premium naked bike design without the intimidation factor of larger displacement models. But here in the year 2025, the market has shifted, and this once celebrated starter bike is now one of the coldest motorcycles on the resale market. What started as an easy entry into motorcycling has become a machine that many riders are leaving behind. At the core of the CB300R is the single-cylinder, liquid-cooled, four-stroke engine measuring 286 cubic centimeters. The motor produces 30 horsepower and 20 pound-feet of torque, which sounds usable for city commuting and lightweight backroad rides. But in real-world conditions, that limited torquey band and high-revving nature left many owners frustrated. The bike demands aggressive throttle input to reach usable power, making it feel strained during acceleration, especially when merging onto highways or carrying extra weight. Where riders expected smooth delivery and crisp throttle response, they instead got a buzzy, overworked engine that struggled outside of short-distance city rides. Weighing just 317 pounds fully fueled, the CB300R is undeniably light and agile, but that lightness paired with a short wheelbase of 53.3 inches contributes to a nervous ride at higher speeds and a floaty feel on uneven pavement. Suspension duties are handled by a 41mm inverted front fork and a preload adjustable rear monoshock. While the setup looks premium on paper, many riders have found it overly stiff and poorly damped, translating every pothole, expansion joint, and road ripple directly through the rider's spine. Braking components include a single front disc with a radial-mounted 4-piston caliper and a rear disc with a single piston caliper. Anti-lock braking system is standard, but the brake feel is inconsistent, especially on longer rides or when riding in wet conditions. The CB300R rides on 17-inch cast wheels with 110mm front and 150mm rear tires, providing a balanced profile but offering limited grip under aggressive braking or in colder climates. Seat height sits at 31.5 inches, which is manageable for most riders, but the narrow frame can make it feel top-heavy at low speeds, especially for beginners. One of the biggest limitations of the CB300R in 2025 is its lack of modern amenities. It comes with a minimalist digital dash that displays speed, gear position, and fuel level, but it lacks smartphone connectivity, ride modes, or traction control, features that have become common even in entry-level bikes. Performance, all while being priced similarly. As a result, buyers looking at the CB300R are finding little incentive to choose it over better-equipped alternatives. When new, the CB300R carried a starting price of $5,014. That made it attractive at launch, but depreciation has been brutal. In 2025, used listings for clean, low-mileage CB300R units routinely sit around $2,800 to $3,200. And even then, Buyers are scarce. With limited torque, outdated ergonomics, and few modern features, this bike's window of relevance is closed quickly. If you thought Honda couldn't miss in the beginner segment, the CB300R proves otherwise. And if you think that was a misstep, wait until you see the next bike on the list. It tried to blend off-road attitude with scooter practicality and ended up with neither. Number 3. Honda CRF 300L Rally. Honda tried to blend rugged styling, off-road capability, and commuter practicality into a single lightweight dual sport with the CRF 300L Rally, but in the year 2025 that gamble is backfiring. This bike may look the part with its Dakar-inspired bodywork, tall stance, and rally-style windscreen, but real-world performance tells a different story. The CRF 300L Rally is powered by a single-cylinder, liquid-cooled 4-stroke engine, producing 27 horsepower, with an engine displacement of 286 cubic centimeters and torque output of just 19.8 pound-feet. That might sound acceptable on paper for a lightweight dual sport, but the reality is far more disappointing. This motor delivers weak low-end power, and riders expecting even basic trail readiness are left frustrated. The transmission is a 6-speed unit paired with a manual clutch. And while the gearing is manageable, the engine's narrow power band means frequent shifting is required to keep momentum. For beginner off-roaders, that becomes a chore rather than a thrill. Combined with a tall first gear and soft clutch engagement, it makes low-speed technical riding more difficult than necessary. The suspension setup includes a 43-inch Showa inverted front fork with 10.2 inches of travel and a Pro-Link rear shock with 10.2 inches of travel as well. On paper, that sounds respectable, but in practice, both front and rear suspension are far too soft for serious off-road use. The fork bottoms out on medium-sized whoops or even potholes, and the rear shock compresses too easily under moderate loads or seated riding on trails. Riders over 180 pounds or those carrying gear often find the bike wallows and pitches during routine maneuvers. Even street potholes can overwhelm the damping system. Braking is handled by a 256-inch front disc with a 2-piston caliper and a 220-inch rear disc with a single piston caliper. Anti-lock braking system comes standard and can be deactivated for the rear wheel during off-road riding, which is a welcome feature. However, feedback from the brake levers is vague and aggressive stopping power is noticeably lacking. Riders looking for precise control while descending loose terrain will be disappointed. The bike's curb weight sits at 338 pounds, making it relatively light for a dual sport, but not light enough to compensate for the lack of performance. Ground clearance measures 10.9 inches, which gives the appearance of trail readiness, but the weight and soft suspension limit real trail performance. Seat height is 35 inches, making the CRF 300L Rally challenging for shorter riders, especially given the long travel suspension and narrow body. Despite its slim tank and light feel, many riders struggle to feel planted at stops or when maneuvering the bike at slow speeds on uneven terrain. When it launched, the CRF 300L Rally carried a starting price of $6,149, but now in 2025, used models with under 1,000 miles are listed for under $3,500, and even those sit unsold. And if you think this oddball bike lost value quickly, wait until you see the next bike on this list, a machine that tried to reinvent Honda's retro legacy and ended up going nowhere. Still watching 15 minutes in? That means you're one of us. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's the worst Honda depreciation story you've seen? We want to hear it. Number 2. Honda CB 1100 Final Edition. It was supposed to be a grand farewell to an era, a tribute to Honda's long history of air-cooled performance and retro styling, built for the purist who miss the days of simple mechanics and chrome-heavy designs. But in 2025, the CB 1100 Final Edition is not being celebrated. It is being ignored. Released as the last iteration of Honda's air-cooled inline-4 platform, this model had all the hallmarks of a future classic. What it did not have was a market willing to support its price, weight, or aging technology. Under the tank sits an 1148 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline 4-cylinder engine, producing 89 horsepower and 66 pound-feet of torque. On paper, those numbers might sound respectable, but in practice, The engine delivers its power in a slow and predictable curve that lacks urgency. Throttle response is smooth, but not exciting. There is no surge, no punch. Just a gradual roll that feels more like a commuter bike than something carrying Honda's legendary badge. The CB1100 Final Edition uses a 5-speed transmission paired with a chain final drive. The gearbox shifts cleanly, but again, the absence of a 6th gear in 2025 feels like a missed opportunity. Highway revs sit higher than necessary, and many riders have reported fatigue on longer stretches. Suspension duties are handled by a pair of 43mm front forks and twin rear shocks, both adjustable for preload. The setup is plush enough for city riding and light touring, but cornering performance is hindered by the bike's heft and soft damping. It was never meant to be a canyon carver, but even by retro standards, the chassis feels sluggish. Braking is provided by dual front disc with 4-piston calipers and a single disc in the rear. The system includes standard anti-lock braking, and while stopping power is adequate, feedback through the levers is vague. Combined with the bike's wet weight of 563 pounds, emergency braking situations can feel less confident than they should. The bike rides on 18-inch wheels wrapped in bias-ply tires, maintaining its classic look, but sacrificing grip and agility compared to modern radial setups. With a seat height of 31.3 inches and wide handlebars, the ergonomics are upright and comfortable, though taller riders may find the foot peg position cramped over long distances. Fuel capacity sits at 4.4 gallons, and thanks to modest fuel consumption, the CB1100 delivers decent range. But that is where the positives end. In a market that now expects integrated electronics, ride modes, digital dashboards, and rider aids, the CB1100 offers none of it. The single analog digital combo gauge looks elegant but feels ancient. There is no traction control, no cruise control, and no connectivity features of any kind. What Honda billed as simplicity now reads more like a lack of innovation. The original price for the final edition hovered around $13,999. That positioned it alongside serious middleweight cruisers and even some performance nakeds, and while some buyers were initially drawn to its classic lines and nostalgic identity, the enthusiasm quickly faded. In 2025, used examples are regularly listed for under $7,000. And they still struggle to sell. If you thought a heritage tribute bike would hold its value, wait until you see the next model on this list. It's one of Honda's most popular cruisers, and it is falling even faster. Number 1. Honda Rebel 300. It was once the go-to beginner bike in the cruiser world. Lightweight, easy to handle, and styled with just enough edge to appeal to younger riders, the Rebel 300 carved out a reputation for being affordable and accessible. Dealerships across America pushed it as the perfect starter motorcycle, low seat, low weight, low price. But here in the year 2025, that strategy has finally backfired. At the core of the Rebel is a 286 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine that produces 25 horsepower and 19.9 pound-feet of torque. For short hops around town, the engine does its job. It's predictable, smooth, and easy to control, but take it out on the highway and the Rebel starts to show its limitations. Acceleration above 50 miles per hour becomes sluggish, and keeping up with traffic on longer rides feels like pushing the engine beyond its comfort zone. The mechanical package is basic, which makes it approachable, but it also contributes to the bike's lack of excitement. It uses a single front disc brake with a twin-piston caliper and a single rear disc with a single piston caliper. Anti-lock braking system is available but not standard on all trims. The suspension includes a traditional telescopic fork up front and dual shocks in the rear, both tuned for comfort at lower speeds, but offering limited responsiveness or adjustability. The chassis feels stable around town but becomes vague at higher speeds or during more aggressive cornering. The Rebel 300 weighs in at 364 pounds wet, making it one of the lightest cruisers on the market. The seat height sits at just 27.2 inches, giving most riders easy ground contact. These dimensions make it a favorite among shorter or first-time riders. However, the extremely compact ergonomics have also drawn criticism. Taller riders report feeling cramped after just a short time in the saddle, and the mid-mounted pegs can lead to knee and hip fatigue over longer rides. Styling has always been a strength of the Rebel line. The blacked-out components, chopped fenders, and minimalist tank give the bike a custom vibe out of the box, but even that isn't enough to save it now. In a saturated market, other brands like Royal Enfield and Kawasaki are offering similarly styled bikes with more power and better highway performance for the same money. The Rebel's styling hasn't changed in years, and without updates it now looks frozen in time. Fuel capacity is just 2.9 gallons, which limits the Rebel's effective range and further reinforces the idea that this is not a bike for long journeys. Riders have also noted that real-world fuel efficiency, while decent, can dip into the low 60s under aggressive throttle use or in city stop-and-go riding. With fuel prices rising, that small tank becomes more of a liability than an advantage. When it comes to price, the Rebel 300 currently lists at $4,999 before fees. It sounds affordable on the surface, but in the used market, that number is plummeting. If you thought the Rebel 300 was still a smart buy in 2025, you might want to take another look at what the resale charts are saying, because in today's market, even a low price can become a high-cost regret. If any of these bikes made your jaw drop, or if you've owned one and felt the burn, drop your story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video if you found it useful, and subscribe so you never miss another buyer's warning. The next list might save you thousands.